Welcome to Monday, January 8th, 2024. The Stay Weather Podcast brought to you by Hot Springs County Travel and Tourism, reminding you that as temperatures get colder and snow is on the horizon at Thermopolis, you can always find yourself in some comfortable, nice hot water. Very active weather coming here in the coming days, folks. We are going to be looking at the most busy weather we've had in quite a while in terms of something coming just about every day or every other day. We're starting off this week with a trough and a cold front coming through the region that brought some of you a little bit of snow over the last 24 hours and some colder conditions. That storm system, all part of a changing weather pattern across the northern hemisphere. We're going to have Canadian cold surges combining with Pacific moisture to bring very good chances of snow. Great news for the mountain snowpack, which is suffering. The mountains are going to get a lot of snow here over the next couple of weeks. With the Canadian air mixing with Pacific moisture, there will be snow on the plains as well. Arctic air is going to be pushing south late this week and into the weekend. As we've been advertising over the last week or so, an Arctic outbreak is on the table, although it may stay east of the divide. We're not completely sold on this yet, but for you folks on the western slope, you're not going to escape winter weather, but you may escape the severe cold. But certainly along and east of the divide, it'll be hard to escape what will likely be some sub-zero temperatures late this week and over the weekend. Expect variable forecasts. Beware anything on your phone or on the internet past 3 or 4 days is likely going to change and be all over the board. So just keep that in mind because there's a lot going on. But one thing is for certain, we've already seen this past weekend, but we're going to see it this week. We're going to see it this weekend. We're going to see it next week. The lower 48 and Canada will be looking at a very stormy, active pattern, which is going to cause airport delays, travel problems on interstates and roads and highways and mountain passes. So you're going to have to stay on your toes as a lot of winter weather is coming. Some great shots from over the weekend. Another sundog here near Laramie. And also some wintry weather late last week across southern Colorado, Cheyenne Mountain there, near Colorado Springs, showing some fresh snow. And that photo I showed you earlier there, the Heart Mountain area in the northern Bighorn Basin. The satellite imagery this morning shows this weather maker. This is what came through late Sunday into early this morning and is now moving into the plains and tapping into the Gulf of Mexico moisture. We'll talk about that system here in a minute. Here across the Pacific, there's a lot going on. Storms up over Alaska, strong moist flow of jet stream energy across the North Pacific. You can't really see it, but Arctic air is really building up here in north central areas of Canada. This is a map that we'll probably show you frequently this week. This shows all the National Weather Service advisories for weather. Whether it's brown here for some strong winds later today and tonight and tomorrow across parts of Wyoming. All of this red and pink and blue, this is associated with that storm system that's now in the Texas Panhandle. This is going to move through Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin. You can see along Interstate 80, this is going to be a mess as we go through the next 24 to 48 hours. And this storm will end up heading into the northeast later this week. Freeze warnings in effect for Arizona. Here's the next stormy weather heading into Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. Lots of winter storm warnings and advisories there. This is going to be a map like this all week. A lot of pink, a lot of blue, and a lot of red going to be showing up with the winter weather crossing the U.S. There's the low over the panhandle of Texas by noon today. A great setup. There's going to be available Gulf of Mexico moisture getting in, colder air coming in on the backside of the system. So this is going to blow up and be a big Midwestern and Great Lakes snowstorm. While this area of colder air is going to come in off the Pacific coast and towards the northwest United States by late tomorrow and into Wednesday. Here's the very, very cold air building over north central Canada. By Thursday noon, high pressure builds strongly into Alaska, allowing the door to open to the Arctic. And you can see this circular area here of very, very cold air that's over North America that has easy access now to pour down the east slopes of the Rockies here. Now, what happens after Thursday is still up to debate. We'll show you that here in a minute. And it has to do with this very cold air mass. Is it going to stay in one piece, break into two, then come together again? Well, this is where the forecast gets really complicated, at least once we get later this week and into the upcoming weekend. This is by noon Thursday. Here's the severe cold in northwest and western Canada beginning to push its way south. So temperatures by the end of the week really begin to get colder across the west. By Saturday morning, that very cold air that was really organized into one big circle gets stretched, and it gets stretched into what looks like three pieces. One into the Great Lakes. This area of blue, you see how it's aligned just along and east of the Continental Divide from the Canadian Rockies all the way to the Colorado Rockies? This is where the Arctic air comes and slips down the divide, but it doesn't get pushed west of the divide. This low pressure here could end up throwing humid air from the Pacific over the Arctic air. We call that overrunning. So this is a complicated scenario here where Arctic air and Pacific moisture may collide if the deep Arctic air stays along and east of the divide. And this is what we see by noon Saturday. The purple area shows the Arctic air. You can see it coming down the east slopes of the Rockies all the way into the Panhandles here by noon Saturday. But notice, along and west of the divide, that Arctic air isn't intruding. It's colder. It's going to snow with that Pacific moisture coming in. But the bitterly cold air will be in Montana, the eastern side of Wyoming, the western Dakotas into Nebraska, then heading eventually into the Midwest and the Gulf Coast later on. But we could also still see this Arctic air get pushed further westward depending on what happens in Canada later this week. But it goes without saying, you're not going to hold back this Arctic air. It's coming south. It's whether or not it gets on the other side of the divide or not. By Saturday afternoon, that low gets closer, and this is where we could have that overrunning event. And if we get that overrunning event, moisture gets east of the divide and produces snow on the plains. Look at all the precipitation, though, coming to the high country of the west, as that feed of Pacific moisture with Arctic air is just a great way to make it snow in the mountains. Look at the snowfall forecast for the next week. This is through next Monday. So you can see how much of Canada and the U.S. is going to have winter weather, getting pretty far south as well. This area right here is going to have a lot of rain and thunderstorm activity, and we might very well, between the rain and the snow, have some ice in those areas between the warmer air and the Arctic air to the north. There's going to be a lot of winter. There's going to be a lot of travel concerns across the country, not only here in the West, but across the U.S., whether it's an interstate or whether it's an airport you're getting to. Now, don't take these numbers for gospel truth, but this is for the next week in the Intermountain West and the Western High Plains. You can see a lot of snow in the high country, some snow on the plains. A lot of this is going to depend on where the Arctic air sets up, whether it stays east of the divide or gets west of the divide. So this map is likely going to go through some fluctuations and changes here over the coming days. Stay tuned. We'll have more for you tomorrow. Have a good Monday.